In the grim darkness of the far future, there are no heroes, only things the galaxy fears more than other things. 13 villains define the darkness of Warhammer 40,000. Some are gods, some are mortals. One of them built the Imperium. Here is every major villain explained. Let's break this down. Asdrubael Vect, the supreme overlord of Comorash, the Dark City, a sprawling extra-dimensional metropolis built inside the webway that is home to the Drukhari and operates on a single governing principle: the strong take what they want, and the weak exist to be taken from. Vect is the oldest living Drukhari. He has ruled the Dark City for over 10,000 years through a combination of political genius, assassination, alliance manipulation, and a willingness to destroy anything and anyone who threatens his position, including the city itself, if doing so eliminates a rival. Vect was not born into power. He was born a slave in the lowest sub-realms of Comorash. A nothing. A body that the Cabals and Archons above him would not have noticed if it had been fed to a pain engine. He clawed his way upward through millennia of schemes so layered that the final moves of one plan were the opening moves of the next. He united the Cabals beneath the banner of the Cabal of the Black Heart, not through loyalty, but through the universal understanding that opposing Vect was more expensive than serving him. His intelligence network spans the Dark City and reaches into real space. His enemies disappear. Their Cabals are absorbed. Their resources are redistributed to Vect's allies, who understand that they are allies only as long as Vect permits them to be. Vect once allowed an entire rival faction to believe they had successfully assassinated him, let them celebrate, let them redistribute his holdings, and then revealed himself alive, reclaimed everything, and executed every conspirator using methods the lore describes only in euphemism. Vect is the villain who proves that in Warhammer 40k, the most dangerous weapon is not a bolter or a demon sword. It is patience applied over 10,000 years by someone who was born with nothing and decided that nothing was not enough. Subscribe and leave a comment telling us which villain you think is the most dangerous. Let us keep going. Ghazghkull Mog Uruk Thraka. A bolter round split his skull open. A painboy named Grotznik replaced the missing pieces with a metal plate and crude bionics. When Ghazghkull woke up, he could hear the gods. Gork and Mork, the twin orc deities of cunning brutality and brutal cunning, spoke directly into his repaired brain and told him to unite every orc in the galaxy into the greatest Wog ever assembled. Ghazghkull obeyed. He has not stopped obeying since. The prophet of the Wog began as a standard Goth clan boy and has grown, through sustained conquest and the biological mechanism that causes orcs to physically enlarge in response to victory, into the single largest and most dangerous orc alive. He invaded Armageddon twice, tying down 3 Space Marine chapters and millions of Imperial Guard in wars so devastating that the Imperium classifies both as defining conflicts of the 41st Millennium. Commissar Yarrick, the human commander who faced Ghazghkull across both wars, earned the orcs' grudging respect, the only human Ghazghkull considers a worthy opponent. After Armageddon, Ghazghkull launched the Great Wa'ogj, a multi-sector invasion that draws orcs from across the galaxy toward the psychic beacon of his Wa'og field. He was decapitated by Ragnar Blackmane of the Space Wolves. Grotznik reattached his head to a bigger body. Ghazghkull got up and continued. The Imperium rates him a threat equivalent to Abaddon the Despoiler. The comparison is accurate and insufficient. Abaddon plans for 10,000 years. Ghazghkull fights with the accumulated momentum of a species that was engineered for war 60 million years ago and has never needed a reason beyond the joy of it. Be'lakor, the first demon prince. Before any mortal champion was elevated, before any Primarch fell, before the concept of ascension had been tested on a living soul, Be'lakor was chosen. All 4 Chaos Gods selected him simultaneously. Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh each poured their power into a single mortal vessel and created the first being to transcend the boundary between the material universe and the warp through the patronage of all 4 ruinous powers at once. Be'lakor was crowned as the Dark Master, given dominion over shadows, and granted the ability to move between dimensions with a freedom that most demons cannot match. Then the gods realized what they had done. They had created a servant who belonged to all of them, and therefore to none of them. Be'lakor was a precedent they regretted, because a demon prince owing allegiance to 4 masters simultaneously meant that no single god could fully control him. Their solution was a curse. Be'lakor was condemned to crown every Chaos champion who came after him. Every mortal elevated to Demon Prince would receive their crown from Be'lakor's hands, and every crowning would remind him that he was the first and the least. the prototype that the gods move past. 10,000 years of crowning successors who received what he was promised and never given. True independence, true authority, true dominion. Be'lakor has spent those millennia scheming to break the curse, manipulating events in both the warp and real space, and nursing a bitterness that makes Perturabo look well-adjusted. Erebus. The most hated character in the franchise and the single most effective mortal villain the setting has ever produced. Erebus was not born Erebus. He murdered a pious man, stole his name, assumed his position within the Word-Bearer's Legion, and used the stolen identity as a platform to engineer the greatest catastrophe in human history. Working alongside Khor Pharon, he guided Lorgar toward chaos after the Emperor destroyed Monarchia. He stole the Anathemi, the chaos-tainted blade that was used to wound Horus on Devin. He arranged for the wounded Warmaster to be taken to the Serpent Lodge where the Chaos Gods could reach him. He whispered the corruption into the ear of the most powerful military commander humanity had ever produced and watched the Imperium tear itself apart. The Horus Heresy, trillions dead, the Emperor broken, the Imperium shattered, was Erebus's project. He designed it, he sold it to Lorgar, he delivered Horus to the gods, he murdered Argyltal, one of the Heresy's most sympathetic characters, from behind. Khorne the Betrayer beat him half to death when the truth was discovered, and the community considers that scene the most cathartic moment in the entire Black Library catalog. Erebus survived. He teleported away. He has survived for 10,000 years through political manipulation, sorcery, and a survival instinct so refined that neither gods nor champions have managed to permanently kill him. The phrase the community uses is the franchise's most universally agreed upon statement. It needs no context. It needs no explanation. Everyone in the fandom, regardless of faction, knows exactly what it means. The Silent King. Sarek. The ruler who sold his species' souls and has spent 60 million years regretting it. The Silent King was the supreme ruler of the Necrontyr, a mortal species cursed with short, cancer-ridden lives on a radiation-blasted homeworld. When the Necrontyr waged war against the Old Ones and lost, Sarek made the bargain that defines the Necrons' entire tragedy. He approached the Ceton, the Star Gods, and accepted their offer of biotransference, the transfer of every Necron-Tyr consciousness into immortal metal bodies. The process worked. The Necron-Tyr became deathless. The process also stripped their souls. Emotions dulled, creativity faded. The common warriors lost their individuality entirely, becoming mindless automatons. The Ceton fed on the soul energy released during the transfer and grew stronger. Sarek realized what he had done. He had traded his species' mortality for their humanity, and the gods who brokered the deal had eaten the difference. He turned on the Ceton. The Necrons shattered the Star Gods into fragments and imprisoned the shards in Tesseract labyrinths. Then Sarek ordered the Great Sleep, 60 million years of dormancy in tomb worlds scattered across the galaxy, waiting for the younger species to exhaust themselves. Before sleeping, Sarek destroyed his own command protocols, the systems that gave him absolute control over every Necron, because he judged himself unworthy of ruling a species he had damned. He has spent the millennia since the Awakening searching for a way to reverse the biotransference, to restore flesh to his people, to undo the bargain that made them immortal and hollow. The Silent King is the villain whose crime was committed 60 million years ago, and whose punishment is being the only Necron who fully understands what was lost. Abaddon the Despoiler. 13 Black Crusades, 10,000 years. One objective. Abaddon the Despoiler is the Warmaster of Chaos, the commander of the Black Legion, and the only mortal champion all 4 Chaos Gods collectively support without any of them being able to claim ownership. He wears the Talon of Horus on his left hand. He carries Drachnien in his right, a demon sword containing the first murder ever committed by one human against another, a weapon so ancient it predates the Chaos Gods themselves. Every Chaos God has offered Abaddon ascension to Demon Prince. Khorne offered limitless rage. Slaanesh offered perfection beyond mortal comprehension. Nurgle offered eternity. Tzeentch offered omniscience. Abaddon refused them all because accepting a god's gift means becoming a god's property, and Abaddon serves no one. He uses chaos the way a general uses ammunition. The 13th Black Crusade broke Cadia, the fortress world that had guarded the Eye of Terror for 10 millennia. The pylons that held the warp rift in check, built by Necrons millions of years before humanity existed, were destroyed. The Cicatrix Maledictum, a galaxy-spanning warp rift, tore reality in half. The Imperium was split, communication was severed, entire sectors were cut off from the Astronomicon. Abaddon accomplished what Horus could not. He did not kill the Emperor. He did something worse. He broke the Imperium's ability to function as a single entity, and he did it without ascending, without kneeling, and without surrendering the one thing the Chaos Gods cannot tolerate in a mortal champion: autonomy. Horus Lupercal, the fall that made every other villain on this list possible. Horus was the first Primarch the Emperor found, the favorite, the most trusted. The Warmaster, given supreme command over every military force in the Imperium so that the Emperor could return to Terra and build the Webway in secret. When the Emperor left without explanation, the Chaos Gods used Horus's doubt as a doorway. On Divine, a poisoned blade brought him to the edge of death. Erebus arranged his exposure to the Chaos Gods' visions, a future where the Emperor was worshipped as a god and the Primarchs were forgotten, their sacrifices erased by a theocratic bureaucracy that valued obedience over glory. The visions were lies woven around truths, and Horus chose to believe them because the alternative was trusting a father who had walked away without saying why. 9 Primarchs followed him. Trillions died. The galaxy burned for 9 years. At the Siege of Terra, Horus lowered his shields and challenged the Emperor to face him. The Emperor boarded the vengeful spirit. Sanguinius was killed trying to reach Horus first. The Emperor held back, unwilling to destroy his most beloved son, until Horus killed a mortal human without thought, and the Emperor saw that nothing remained of the man he loved. The psychic blast obliterated Horus's soul so completely that not even the Chaos Gods could salvage it. The Emperor was mortally wounded. He has been dying on the Golden Throne for 10,000 years. Horus's rebellion did not just break the Imperium, it broke the future the Emperor was building. The Webway Project, the evolution of humanity beyond the warp, the dream of a species that would never need gods. All of it died in the same moment aboard the same ship, in the space between a father's hesitation and a son's final choice. The Tyranid Hive Mind. It is not a villain, it is a weather system. The Tyranid Hive Mind is the collective consciousness that directs every Tyranid organism across every hive fleet. A psychic intelligence so vast that its shadow in the warp blocks out the Astronomicon and silences communication across entire sectors. It does not hate the Imperium, it does not seek revenge against the Aeldari, it does not hold grudges against the Necrons, it is hungry. The Tyranids are an extragalactic species that travels between galaxies, consuming all biological material on every world they encounter. When a hive fleet finishes with a planet, the planet is a sterile rock. Every organism, every plant, every drop of water, every atom of usable biomass has been stripped, processed, and absorbed into the fleet's biology. Hive Fleet Behemoth struck Ultramar and was defeated at the Battle of Macraig at the cost of the Ultramarines' entire first company. Hive Fleet Kraken split into tendrils that overwhelmed multiple sectors simultaneously. Hive Fleet Leviathan attacked from below the galactic plane in a vector no defense was designed to cover. The Hive Mind adapts. Every weapon used against it is analyzed, countered, and rendered ineffective within a single engagement. Every biological trait of every species it consumes is cataloged and potentially incorporated into future Tyranid organisms. The terrifying possibility that the Imperium's strategic planners have not fully processed is that the hive fleets encountered so far may be scouts. The main body of the Tyranid species may still be in the void between galaxies, and what the Imperium has been fighting for centuries is the equivalent of fingers testing what is inside a jar before the fist closes. The Hive Mind is not the most powerful villain on this list, it is the most inevitable. Khorne. The Blood God sits on a throne of skulls, and the throne is never finished. Khorne is the Chaos God of war, violence, murder, rage, and martial honor. And he is the oldest and most powerful of the 4 ruinous powers because violence is the oldest activity sentient life has ever practiced. Every battle fought anywhere in the galaxy feeds him. Every kill strengthens him. Every war, regardless of who fights it or why, deposits energy into the warp that Khorne claims as his own. He does not care who wins. He does not care why the fighting started. He cares that the blood flows and the skulls accumulate. Blood for the Blood God. Skulls for the Skull Throne. The chant is not a prayer, it is a receipt. Khorne's domain in the warp is the Brass Citadel, a fortress of impossible scale surrounded by an ocean of blood that never coagulates. His greater demons are the Bloodthirsters, towering, winged monstrosities wielding axes the size of buildings who exist to embody the concept of violence at its most concentrated. His chosen mortal champions are the Khorne Berserkers, World Eaters, and Renegade Astartes, who have surrendered themselves so completely to rage that higher cognitive function has been replaced by a single repeating directive. Kill whatever is nearest and move to the next target. Khorne hates sorcery, he hates Tzeentch. He considers psychic power a form of cowardice because it allows the user to kill without risk, and risk is what gives killing its value. The Blood God is the simplest villain in Warhammer 40k and the most honest. He does not deceive, he does not scheme, he does not promise one thing and deliver another. He wants blood. He says so. He has been saying so since before human civilization existed, and he will be saying so long after the last human has bled out on a battlefield they did not choose. The Tzeentch. The Changer of Ways does not want you to lose. He wants you to plan. Every plan feeds him. Every scheme, every strategy, every contingency, every backup plan for the backup plan deposits energy into the warp that Tzeentch claims. He is the chaos god of sorcery, change, manipulation, ambition, and forbidden knowledge, and his defining characteristic is that he cannot stop scheming even when the schemes contradict each other. Tzeentch's plans are not sequential. They are layered, recursive, and self-contradicting. A plan to conquer a world contains a sub-plan that ensures the conquest fails, which triggers a contingency that produces an outcome more valuable than the original conquest, which feeds into a larger scheme that requires the contingency to fail as well. The result is a web of causality so dense that not even Tzeentch fully understands it, which is the point, because understanding would mean the web was finished. And a finished plan is a dead plan. And Tzeentch is the god of change, not completion. His domain in the warp is the Crystal Labyrinth, a shifting maze of impossible geometry that reconfigures itself constantly. His greater demons are the Lords of Change, towering bird-like sorcerers whose mastery of the warp exceeds most mortal psychers by orders of magnitude. His champion is Magnus the Red, the demon Primarch of the Thousand Suns, who made a deal with Tzeentch to save his legion and has spent 10,000 years discovering the hidden costs. Tzeentch is the most dangerous chaos god because opposing him feeds him. The plan to stop Tzeentch is a plan, and plans are what he eats. Nurgle. The Plague. Father loves you. That is not a metaphor. It is not a taunt. Nurgle, the chaos god of disease, decay, despair, and rebirth, genuinely loves every living thing in the galaxy, and his love is the most horrifying concept in Warhammer 40,000. Nurgle does not hate his victims. He adores them. He sends his plagues not as punishment, but as gifts. Each disease a blessing that brings the recipient closer to the understanding that all things decay, all things die, and the acceptance of that decay is the only true peace the universe offers. His realm in the warp is the Garden of Nurgle, an endless, festering paradise of rotting vegetation, stagnant pools, and infectious beauty. The garden is not a hell. It is a home. Nurgle's demons cavort through it with genuine joy. The plague bearers count their blessings as they spread disease across real space. The Nurglings, tiny mischievous demons that cluster around their grandfather, play in the filth with the enthusiasm of children in a sandbox. The great unclean ones, Nurgle's greater demons, are bloated, rotting entities who address mortal enemies with affection and encouragement before disemboweling them with rusted swords. Mortarion, the demon Primarch of the Death Guard, is Nurgle's greatest champion and his most resentful servant, a being who was forced into Nurgle's embrace to save his legion and has spent 10 millennia hating the god who saved him. Nurgle does not mind. Resentment is an emotion, and emotions are alive. And everything alive belongs to the Plague Father eventually. Nurgle is the most unsettling chaos god because his evil does not look like evil. It looks like love. A grandfather's love, warm and unconditional and utterly, comprehensively destructive. Slaanesh, the youngest god, the scream at the center of the warp. Slaanesh was born from the collective psychic overflow of the Eldari Empire, a civilization so powerful, so advanced, and so bored that its pursuit of sensation crossed every boundary its culture had ever established and produced a new chaos god from the accumulated weight of its excess. The birth of Slaanesh killed billions of Eldari in an instant, devoured their pantheon of gods, tore a hole in reality that became the Eye of Terror, and created a being whose hunger for Eldari souls has defined an entire species' existence for 10,000 years. Every Eldari who dies without protection, without a spirit stone, without the infinity circuit, without the homunculized dark science, has their soul consumed by Slaanesh. The god who is born from their excess feeds on their death. The craft world Eldari wear spirit stones to prevent it. The Drukhari torture others to stave off the hunger. The Harlequins dance because Segurok, the laughing god, hides them. The Inari believe Inead, the god of the dead, can destroy Slaanesh if he is fully awakened. Every Eldari faction's defining behavior is a response to Slaanesh's existence. Slaanesh is the chaos god of excess, pleasure, pain, obsession, and perfection. The god's greater demons are the keepers of secrets, towering, beautiful, terrifying entities that embody allure and horror simultaneously. Fulgrim, the demon primarch of the Emperor's children, is Slaanesh's greatest champion, and the Emperor's children themselves have become noise marines whose sonic weapons weaponize sensation into concussive force. Slaanesh is the chaos god the setting is most afraid of because Slaanesh is the chaos god that was created by a species that thought it was too sophisticated to fall. The Eldari were the galaxy's most advanced civilization. They built Slaanesh by accident. The lesson the setting draws from that birth is the darkest lesson in Warhammer 40k. Perfection destroys, ambition corrupts. And the scream you hear at the center of the warp is the sound of a species that created its own god and discovered that the god was hungry. The Emperor of Mankind. The final villain on this list is the one most of the Imperium worships as a god. The Emperor of Mankind built an interstellar empire designed to free humanity from superstition, religion, and dependence on the warp. He created the Primarchs and the Space Marines to conquer the galaxy through secular military force. He outlawed the worship of gods because he understood that the Chaos Gods fed on faith and that a species that worshipped anything was a species that fed its own predators. The Great Crusade was not a war of conquest. It was a war of liberation, freeing humanity from the alien, the mutant, and the demon so that the Webway project could be completed and humanity could travel the stars without ever touching the warp again. That was the plan. The plan failed. Magnus shattered the Webway. Horus turned traitor. The Emperor was mortally wounded and interred on the Golden Throne. And in the 10,000 years since, the Imperium he built to reject divinity has become the most violently theocratic civilization in the galaxy. The Emperor is worshipped as a god by the ecclesiarchy. His word is law, except he cannot speak. His will is absolute, except it is interpreted by the Senatorum Imperialis, the Inquisition, and the Adeptus Ministorum, none of whom agree on what his will actually is. The Imperium burns heretics in his name. It exterminates alien civilizations in his name. It sacrifices 1,000 psychers a day to the Golden Throne to keep the Astronomicon burning and the Webway breach sealed, and it calls this devotion. The Emperor opposed everything the Imperium has become. He designed a civilization built on reason. The civilization became a cathedral. He banned the worship of gods. He became one. The final villain of Warhammer 40,000 is not a Chaos God or a Tyranid Hive Mind or a Necron Overlord. It is the possibility that the Emperor, the most powerful psyker in human history, the being who has been sitting on the Golden Throne for 10,000 years with nothing to do but think, knew this would happen. That the theocratic nightmare the Imperium has become was not a failure of his plan, but a feature of it. That a species willing to sacrifice everything for a god it believes in is a species that will survive the long war against chaos, and the cost of that survival, freedom, reason, dignity, joy, was a price the Emperor calculated and accepted before the first Space Marine was ever created. The final villain of Warhammer 40k is not the darkness. It is the possibility that the light was designed to burn.